The broadcast of the regular meeting of the Transportation and Public Works Committee will now begin.
Good afternoon. I'm Councilman Reich, and I chair the Transportation Public Works Committee. And this is this committee's regularly scheduled meeting this day, September 23rd, 2020. I'm joined by a quorum of my colleagues. I will note for the record that this meeting is a remote participation by members of the City Council and City staff as authorized by Minnesota Statute Section 13D.21 due to the declared public health emergency. At this time, I will have the clerk confirm our quorum.
Councilmember Gordon.
I'm here.
Fletcher. Johnson.
Here.
Palmisano.
Present.
Bender.
Here.
Chair Reich.
Present.
There are 6 members present.
We have multiple categories on our meeting agenda: public hearings, consent items, and discussion. I will go through the consent items first. Any committee member can pull them for further deliberation. Starting with, scroll down here, 11 items, starting with item 4, which is the contract amendment with Custom Products and Services, Stone Pros LLC for sidewalk and parking snow clearing, removal and ice control services for special service districts. 5 is the contract amendment with Safety Signs LLC for rental traffic control devices. 6 is the contract amendment with Mayor Contracting Incorporated for the 61st Street West Street Reconstruction Project. 7 is the contract amendment with Olson and Newswold Engineers for the 28th Avenue South Bridge Replacement Project. 8 is the contract amendment with Suburban Elevator of Minnesota for elevator maintenance. 9 is the Weber Parkway, 44th Avenue North, LYNDALE Avenue North, and Humboldt Avenue North Street Reconstruction Project. And that's a project designation and setting the public hearing for, let's see here, November 4th of this year. Item 10 is the 4th Street North and South Street Reconstruction Project, also the project designation, and that also will have a public hearing on November 4th. 11 is the Uniform Assessment Rates, establishing the 2021 rates. 12 is the Solid Waste Definition Ordinance, setting a public hearing for that, and that will be held on October 7th. 13th is the bid for the Winona West Lift Station Project. 14 is the bid for Pump Station number 5, Masonry and Pier Repair Project. Is there any discussion for these consent items? Not seeing any. I will move all items as submitted and have the clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Chair Reich.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
We will now proceed to the 3 public hearings, starting with public hearing number 1. And with that, I will yield the floor for the staff presentation.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is Robin Hutchison, Public Works Director. I will introduce Stephanie Johnson, the Director of Surface Water and Sewer, to give an overview prior to this public hearing. Stephanie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Reich and members of the committee. The Metropolitan Council Environmental Services, or MCES, collects and treats wastewater at its 7 regional treatment plants. MCES is responsible for ensuring that sufficient sewer capacity exists to serve planned development and for providing regional wastewater collection and treatment services. Funds to operate the Metropolitan Council systems are collected in 2 ways: through municipal wastewater charges and through SAC. I should back up. SAC is Sanitary Sewer Service Availability Charges. Municipal waste charges are paid by municipalities for treatment of wastewater generated within their jurisdiction. In Minneapolis, these charges are passed on to individual property owners via utility bills. SAC is a fee to reserve sewer capacity for new or increased discharges into the Metropolitan Council's collection system. These fees are charged based upon the estimated maximum potential daily wastewater flow, which is directly linked to the usage of individual properties. SAC is owed when a property first connects to the regional wastewater system. SAC may also be charged when a business grows or a property changes use in a way that creates more demand on the wastewater system. SAC is charged by the Metropolitan Council to local governments, which in turn pass the charge on to property owners. Minneapolis pays SAC to Metropolitan Council and bills property owners to recoup the upfront SAC payments. At least once every 3 years, the Metropolitan Council performs an audit-like process of local government SAC records called a community review. As a result of the 2014 community review in Minneapolis, Met Council identified 11 accounts that had outstanding SAC fees due. As of today, 4 of those properties still have outstanding SAC fees, representing a total of $19,060. These are the properties identified on the assessment roll provided. All property taxpayers were mailed a notice of public hearing letter with the amount to be assessed. The entire amount of the unpaid SAC fees will be assessed to these properties as part of their 2021 real estate tax statements. Customers have the option to prepay the entire assessment through the end of this year and avoid any interest charges. At this time, we request approval of a resolution to adopt the assessments as listed on file in the City Engineer Special Assessment Office in the total amount of $19,060 and transmission of said assessments to the Hennepin County Auditor. I will stand for any questions. Also on the line are staff from CPED's Development Review Office, which manages and administers the SAC program for the City of Minneapolis.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions per the staff presentation? I am not seeing any indication. I will now open the public hearing for item 1. I do note in the chat bar that we do have someone signed up for that item and may speak. It's Ascan Corner. You may make your statements.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hello? Okay, my name is Afghan Kona. I'm one of the properties, I suppose. My issue is that I'm pretty sure I paid the fee, and I've sent you an email explaining the circumstances, but essentially, I do remember in 2013, when we renovated the building, that the SAC fee was assessed and a letter was issued, and that our building permit was contingent on payment of that fee, or the issuing of the building permit. So I'm very sure, since we got a building permit issued, that we did pay the fee. I also have, I have no record, I have no canceled checks or any bank accounts anymore from that time period, 7 years ago. But I also have some records from the loan from the bank that took the SAC fee into consideration as my contribution to the project. So at the very least, I know that the bank has counted it, and the bank wouldn't have counted it unless I would have submitted a receipt or a canceled check or some evidence of me making that payment, right? So I'm very sure that I paid the fee. And I think it's fairly unreasonable after 7 years to come, and that's really the first time I heard about it was this year when I was sent a letter about the special assessment and then about this hearing. But I've tried to get in touch with the bank, but they're not, it's COVID and everything, but even there, I don't know why I would be after 7 years be asked to produce those kind of documentation. So I'm clearly remember getting the SAC letter. I clearly remember submitting it to the planning office, to Scott Anderson. And I clearly remember that the issuing of the building permit was ultimately contingent on payment of all fees related to the project. And so I'm pretty sure I paid it. Now, I have no physical evidence of that, but if my memory serves and all the circumstantial evidence that I have access to suggest that I paid the fee. That's really all I can say. And I think it's sort of unreasonable, again, after 7 years to ask me to provide proof that I paid rather than the city, providing proof that it didn't pay. That's all I have to say. But if you have questions, I'm glad to answer any questions you have.
No, I think you very clearly articulated the situation from your perspective, and I'll see if there's any other people who want to make comment, and then we will respond to all comments collectively at the end. Clerk, is there any other person indicating wishing to speak?
Chair Reich, there is no one else on the line for this item.
Well, does staff have any indication of how to approach this situation as articulated by this gentleman?
Chair Reich and committee members, this is Brad Carter, Development Services. Mr. Corner is correct that a permit was under review in 2013. A letter from Met Council did go out, was sent to the city and to them, indicating that one SAC charge was due. What appears to have happened is staff at the time did not add that fee line into the larger building permit. And so the permit was issued and all the work was done, but the $2,345 SAC fee or whatever it is was not added at that time. And it wasn't until the Met Council in their 3-year audit of all of our records came through and said, we see no record. We see that we issued you a letter and a letter to the property owner that SAC was due. We don't have a corresponding record in our accounts showing that the city moved that money over there. So that's what happened on that one. If need be, again, we had the change from our old permitting system, Kiva, into Elms in 2016. So we can try to go back and work with our IT staff to pull the fee records on that to determine. I know one thing we could do is we can re-look at the valuation and recalculate the fee that way to confirm that the SAC was not collected on that building permit. All the rest of the fees were. The reviewer did not drop that SAC fee in, so the permit was issued, paid and issued, and work commenced until, and this didn't get on anybody's radar until Met Council brought it to our attention.
Well, I would encourage to do that further inquiry, in case something got lost in the shuffle of different data sets. Because the gentleman seems to have articulated a pretty thorough understanding from his perspective, so we should be thorough on our end in a commensurate way. So my recommendation is to certainly proceed between now and the council meeting to have that engagement and that inquiry.
We can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any, well, I will, since no one else is here for the public hearing, I will close the public hearing and open the floor to committee members if anyone wishes to make comment. I'm not seeing anything. Well, then I will move this item as submitted, noting that staff will get further clarification on the situation.
My name is Agnes. I am a little bit late to get into the meeting because I just got the ID and passcode and stuff. I'm calling for 2632 Grand Street, Northeast Minneapolis. I hope I'm not too late for the meeting. Sorry about that.
Is this referring to item 1, SAC charges?
No, her call is about sidewalk snow shoveling.
Oh, okay. Well, we will wait till that part of the agenda is before us.
Could I, excuse me, this is Austin Kern again. Could I make one more comment?
Sure.
It is just that the person on the planning commission, I think they demonstrated that the city did not send the money on to the Met Council, but I don't contest that. I'm pretty sure it's paid by the builder, the building permits was part of their contract, and the SAC fee was paid by me. So there's 2 different payers, right? Mm-hmm. And so even so it might very well be that that's the reason why it wasn't included in the permitting fees, because it wasn't intended to be included in the permitting fees because I was paying it or I paid it, right?
That's great.
And that I just wanted you to know that. So just to demonstrate that you didn't, that it wasn't passed on to Met Council doesn't mean I didn't pay it to the city somewhere.
Well, good information. I would say continue to work with staff. They've been directed to continue to dig into the information and data to get final clarity on this matter. So continue to engage with staff is my recommendation.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
So this public hearing for item 1 is closed. I didn't see any indication for conversation. I will move the item before us, noting that staff will work with the gentleman who presented. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Gordon,
Aye.
Fletcher, Johnson,
Aye.
Palmisano,
Aye.
Bender,
Aye.
Chair Reich.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
Okay, we'll now go to public hearing number 2, and again yield the floor for staff presentation.
Chair Reich, members of the committee, I'm introducing Mike Kennedy, the Director of Transportation Maintenance and Repair, to present background information prior to the public hearing on sidewalk repair and construction assessments.
Thank you, Director Hutchinson and Chair Reich. Public Works, this is about sidewalk construction and repair season for 2019. The Public Works completed its annual inspection and repair of sidewalks in 2019. Property owners had the option of contracting for the repair themselves or allowing the city to complete the work and be billed or assessed for the work. For those choosing the latter, this action is to proceed with the process for collecting those assessments. All property owners receive a bill for the completed work. If the owner did not pay the bill, the cost of the work will be listed on the assessment roll and assessed to property taxes as a special assessment on January 1 of next year. If the property owner chooses to contest the work or for the cost of the work, they have the opportunity to appeal at an administrative hearing. If the property owner is satisfied with the determination of the administrative hearing officer, no further action is necessary. If the property owner chooses to contest the administrative hearing's determination, they may elect to appeal at a hearing before the TNPW committee of the City Council. I apologize, it may say policy and it might say POGO there, but that's a mistake we missed in all of our clearing here. If they are not satisfied with the decision of the committee, they may then appeal to the district court. This appeal must be made within 30 days after the adoption of the assessment roll by the City Council. A list of properties and the charges to be assessed will be provided at the time of the public hearing. The properties on the list to be assessed, which are on file with the City Engineer Special Assessment Office, had sidewalk repair and construction work done during 2019 by the city's contractor. The amount to be assessed as special assessment is the assessment principal is the cost of the work plus the sidewalk overhead charge. The sidewalk overhead charge is 10% of the cost of the work with a cap of $50. The total principal amount of the proposed assessments on the list of properties to be assessed, less prepayments received and adjustments by the hearing officer, is $429,914.58. So our proposal today, our recommendation is passage of resolution adopting and levying the assessments and adopting the assessment roll for the sidewalk repair and construction for the 2019 construction season on the list of property owners dated August 6, 2020. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions per the staff presentation? I'm not seeing any. I will now open the public hearing, and I don't have any indication of anyone registered. Has anyone subsequently indicated a desire to be in queue? Not seeing or hearing any. I will close the public hearing and move this item. Is there any discussion from committee members? If not, I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Gordon,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Palmisano,
Aye.
Bender,
Aye.
Chair Reich.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
That concludes that item. We can now go to our final public hearing, and again, request staff to give a report.
Chair Reich, Mike Kennedy will also give this report on snow and ice removal from public sidewalks and the assessments associated.
Again, thank you, Director Hutchison and Chair Reich. Again, we are here for the public hearing for snow and ice removal from public sidewalks and their assessments. Each winter season, Public Works enforces the city sidewalk shoveling ordinance for properties in violation of this ordinance. Public Works sends a notice to the property owner, and if the property owner remains in violation, then Public Works hires a private contractor to remove the snow and ice on the sidewalk in front of the property. All property owners receive a bill for the completed work. If the owner does not pay the bill, the cost of the work will be listed on the assessment roll and assessed to the property taxes as a special assessment on January 1 of the next year. If the property owner wishes to contest the cost of the work, they have the opportunity to appeal at an administrative hearing. If the property owner is satisfied with the determination of the hearing officer, no further action is necessary. If the property owner wishes to contest the hearing officer's determination, they may choose to appeal at the public hearing before the TMPW committee today. If the appeal is denied by the committee, they may then appeal to district court. This appeal must be made within 30 days after the adoption of the assessment roll by the City Council. A list of properties and charges to be assessed will be provided at the time of the hearing. The properties on the list to be assessed dated August 6, 2020, and as on file with the City Engineer's Special Assessment Office, had the snow and ice removal work done by the city during the 2019-2020 winter season, and were sent a bill for the cost of the work and were notified that a special assessment for the removal charge plus interest would be added to the real estate taxes if the charges were not paid through the billing process. The amount to be assessed as special assessments principal is the cost of the removal work. The total principal amount and proposed assessments on the list of properties to be assessed is $325,995. The assessments will be collected in their entirety on the 2021 real estate tax statements with interest. So therefore, our recommendation today is passage of resolution adopting and elevating the assessments and adopting the assessment roll for sidewalk snow and ice removal charges for the 2019-2020 season on the list of properties dated August 6, 2020. If you'll indulge me a little bit, I'd like to talk a little bit more about this because this one is often interesting. Minneapolis Code of Ordinance 445 defines the responsibilities for maintaining the sidewalks in the winter season. It states that the abutting property owners are responsible. And most of you know this, single family homes and duplexes must be cleared 24 hours after the end of the snowfall. All other properties need to be cleared within 4 daylight hours after the end of snow. If it can't be removed because of winter conditions, they can sprinkle some sand or salt until they can get it removed once the weather helps. The criteria on the ordinance is full width and down to the bare pavement. Ordinance allows that if the work isn't done, the city can clear the sidewalk and bill the property owner. Over the last decade, Sidewalk Inspection Office and Public Works has taken steps to reduce the time that it takes to get unshoveled sidewalks cleared. Steps included taking out some of the inspection steps, including a second inspection, things like that, to bring the time frame down. Eliminating the warning letter, now called the order to correct letter, to repeat offenders in a season. If we have a repeat offender, we go right to eyes on inspection and then a work order. Adding staff resources to perform more inspections and hiring contractors to clear the walks. There's been continued interest from the council to further speed up the process and be even more aggressive. 2 years ago, we introduced the concept of proactive inspections. That is, rather than relying on complaints only, reactive inspections, teams of inspectors will go after each 1-inch snowfall and proactively inspect random areas across the city and insert them into the enforcement process. The introduction of that initiative included enhanced outreach with the media, as well as the Director of Public Works sending out a letter to some 130,000 properties at the beginning of the season to remind them of their winter responsibilities. If people want to appeal the bill for their work and the cost of their bill, there are a series of steps, as I had enumerated earlier. In the 2019-2020 winter season, sidewalk inspections ordered and completed work orders for 1,425 properties. Of those, 147 people expressed an interest to appear before our hearing officer. We ended up actually holding 72 virtual hearings over a period of 6 days. Of those, 32 people have informed Public Works that they intend to appeal to the City Council today. I don't believe we have that many on the list today, but many of them have come here. During the administrative hearings, there were several common lines of reasoning for contesting the charges. Complaints about the letter itself. I never got my letter. I got it late. It went to the wrong address. I live someplace else. How was I supposed to know it needed shoveling if I never got a letter? The answer to that is the letter is a courtesy. There is nothing in the ordinance that states the city has a duty to inform about an unshoveled sidewalk. It is the responsibility of the owner to know when it needs shoveling and ensure that it is completed. And note that after the first offense, as I mentioned earlier, in a winter season, we don't even send a letter. We go right to an inspection and work order. Another question, I'm a property manager and I should have gotten it instead. Or this is rental property, it should have gone to the tenant or the resident. I rely on others to get it done. Again, the letter is a courtesy. It's the responsibility of the owner to know when sidewalks need shoveling and ensure it is completed. If they are relying on someone else to do it, their complaint is with whoever that is, not the city. Another thing, I was out of town. That does not absolve them of their responsibility. They need to make arrangements to get it done. We hear fairly often, I shoveled the sidewalk, not the contractor. Very often during extended cold snaps, the contractor needs to make 2 trips. First to scrape what they can and apply de-icer, and then they'll return sometimes the next day to complete the job. Sometimes the property owner will do some work in between. Sometimes adequately, sometimes it still needs to be cleaned up. But the contractor still did the work, hence the bill. Note that last year, in response to similar complaints, in addition to the before and after photos that we have the contractor do to verify our billing, we now ask the contractor to take a photo of themselves doing the work. That has been successful in responding to these kinds of complaints. Another concern we hear is the charge of $239 is excessive. I could have gotten it done for much less. Our prices are based on competitive bids. Some people say that they've called 311 to get a cost for a cost comparison. They were referred to the contractors that have made themselves available to shovel for a fee. These costs are for immediate snow clearing before it is compacted for days and bonded to the pavements. Our contractors are coming several days later. Conditions are quite different and it's a much harder effort to get the snow and ice off. Hence the difference between those 2 costs. We hear I am physically unable to shovel my sidewalk. We understand that. 311 has a growing list of resources where people can request help for a fee, and we've added to that this past year. Another thing, city or county plows push snow back onto my sidewalk. Well, if that happens, they are welcome to call 311 and report it. If either entity feels, either the county or the city feel we did something extraordinary, we actually did push it on there and create a problem, we may help clean it up. But in some cases, like when the sidewalk is adjacent to the curb, snow storage must be shared between the street plows and the sidewalk. As long as the property owner keeps enough cleared for a wheelchair, inspectors and cleared down, inspectors would not gig them. And we hear, I cleared it well enough. I put down sand. It was a good enough job. Full disclosure, sidewalk inspection for snow and ice compliance is subjective. What is good enough is often in the eye of the beholder. We strive to be as consistent as possible, but it is impossible to be perfect every time. But we will consider it if something seems obviously amiss when looking at the photos. But we do, and we believe that the council wants us to go by the ordinance, which says full width down to bare pavement. And so that's basically what we are going with. That completes my presentation. We're able to stand for questions if needed, and there are staff available to answer questions as well.
From the committee, are there any questions per the staff presentation? Not seeing any at this time. I will then open the public hearing. We do have a list that I will go through, and then if people have subsequently joined us, we will get to you as well in turn. I will start with Kedar Kursager. I may have pronounced that incorrectly, but you may make your comments. And I think
Hello, this is Kedar. Yeah, this is
hey,
Kedar. You guys can hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much, first of all, for taking the time to listen to my, appeal and a complaint as well about the citation that I had received at my property. As you mentioned before, some of the excuses maybe you called, I don't remember what was the word you used, or what you hear from other people. Obviously, there are only a certain number of things that people can call about, and whichever it may be, they will fall into those categories. So I had submitted my photos that we had done the work. It actually even showed that the neighboring properties which were further south of my property still had some white snow or slush on it, whereas mine did not show that. My main complaint is that when we do the snow one time, that the city comes couple times later on, many a times late in the night, some other day, and then when they clear the street, it does push more snow back onto our sidewalk as well. So beyond the photos that I submitted, that the work that we did, I really don't know what else I have to provide to contest these charges.
Very good. Well, I will go through the queue, and I will. Hello. Oh, it's a dog. And I will have staff respond to specific questions collectively, just for efficiency of the meeting. So thank you for that, and we'll note that and respond at the end.
Mr. Chair, may I ask that all of the people speaking give their address?
Oh, very good point. Yes, Mr. Kedar. Did Mr. Kedar give his address? I couldn't recall.
It's 2709 Stevens.
Oh, thank you.
Correct.
Sir.
I did. Yeah, I did not provide it, but that's what the address is.
Oh, thank you. So moving down the line, Bridget Consumus, if you could state your name and address for the record and make your comments. Believe Bridget. I will now go down. I'll go through the list again just in case someone's having technical difficulty. But next on the list is Michael Armel.
I'm here.
Yeah. Name and address for the record.
Michael Armel, 2519 and 2523 LYNDALE Avenue South. We had sent in some photos to the council comment at minneapolismn.gov, and I'm wondering if those are viewable or not.
I don't have those capacities, but I'm sure staff has them in their file.
Okay, so
but you can give a narrative to reflect what you're.
Yeah. Okay, so basically, we run 100 units in Hennepin County, have been for over 20 years. No citations like this have ever occurred in the past, and this year, for whatever reason, we got two. The reason I asked about if you can see what we sent is because even in the city provided photos of the before work, you can see plain as day that we are down to bare cement in most places on these contiguous properties. We have not neglected this. I have paid our contractor, which is Jim's Lawn and Landscape, just this last winter to keep those sidewalks and that property clear, $2,939. They come out after every single snowfall and shovel those sidewalks and salt them. what happens is a lot of times, which is probably common at other properties other than just this one, is we are on a hill, it's a berm, and we get into weather patterns that are extremely difficult. For example, the few days leading up to this photograph, we had temperatures, daytime highs, starting on January 22nd that were 36 degrees, 34 degrees, 32 degrees, 33 degrees, which obviously causes melt and then refreeze at night. So we do as best we can to put a lot of salt out there, and then we start getting complaints that there's too much salt on our sidewalks, and people that use the sidewalks, we have our name and signs all over our building so people can contact us, and they do, and say, hey, this is bad for the environment, there's too much salt, you know, it's not good. And so we're kind of in this balancing act of trying to keep a good path clear, which arguably we have done, and not over salting and over sanding. But like I say, I mean, this is something we pay for. This is something we check on. You know, we're not just saying someone else takes care of it. We are holding the bag on this, and we take it very seriously. I'm just really surprised to have $476 charge for what looks like, by the photos again provided by the city, was some contractor just came out and threw blue salt over our other salt. It's really, there's got to be a little bit of an exception. I know that there was talk about, you know, things being subjective here, but we are not problem properties. We take care of our stuff. We take care of our people. All of our housing in Minneapolis is affordable, and charges like this make it very difficult to keep it that way. We do not feel we should be paying $476 for someone else to do work that we've done.
Very good points, and we do have the photographs are up and visible. So thank you for that. Again, just to get through the list, I will aggregate the comments and response in order. So thank you for that, and thank you for the visual presentation and narrative. Moving down the line, just real check-in, is Bridget available now? Okay, if not, I will just go down to Tanisha Robinson. You can please address the committee.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanisha Robinson. I live at 2505 DuPont Avenue North. I've currently owned this property for the past 4 years. Last year was the first year that I've ever received notice of inadequate snow removal. As submitted, as submitted in my appeal, I received notice on or around December 11th. The sidewalk was shoveled and salted as shown in the pictures that I submitted. However, as you stated, per your subjective review, the snow is required to be removed down to the pavement. However, taking into consideration the weather, the time of snowfall, temperature, wind speed, and a host of other factors, requiring a bare pavement is a little unrealistic. Additionally, you mentioned that it can take your contractors up to 2 days to remove snow, yet you only give the property only 24 hours. I really do not agree with the fee that I'm being charged, and arguably my sidewalk was shoveled and treated, and you have the photos to review. So again, thank you for your time, and I hope that you take this into consideration. And lastly, I would like to recommend that you guys reevaluate your assessment. I know you mentioned prior to that it is subjective, but it just doesn't measure up and it doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Moving down, we have Agnes Chikfufa. Agnes, are you in the line? We'll go back one time through. Myla Bokobos. Is there a Mila in queue? Not hearing that. Clerk, are there other people who have registered, or do we just open it up?
There's one other unidentified caller with a number that ends with 5007. If that person is here for this public hearing, they could press *6 to unmute and identify themselves.
5007. Oh, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Michael Loney. I am the individual with the phone number ending in 007. Can you hear me?
Oh.
Yeah, certainly. And if you could state your address for the record.
Sure. 1329 West Minnehaha Parkway.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for allowing me the opportunity again to appeal on this matter. You know, I really don't have a lot to say other than the fact that if you look at the photos, you will see evidence of salt and sand that are put down. We do that regularly. We have a corner lot, very, very heavily traveled by foot. We have a retaining wall that's about 4.5 feet high that faces north. And so as the sun moves on a daily basis, when there's a lot of foot traffic out in front of our property and along the, it gets packed down very rapidly. For that reason, we do keep sand and salt in buckets in our garage that we appreciate that the city provides, because we are always utilizing that. But there is evidence of that sand and salt being put down in the photographs, and I do feel that for that reason, there's been, you know, more than a reasonable effort on our part to do our part to avoid any sort of slip hazard around the property. You know, that's really our primary concern. The other one was the fact that we didn't receive the letter. I understand that you mentioned right away that the letter is a courtesy, but all along I know that the letter has been part of something that's been mentioned that you know has been sent out. For whatever reason, we didn't receive one. Had we received one, I think that it would have certainly put us more on alert that there was a potential issue, and we're the type of people that I'm the kind of guy that when I fire up my snowblower, I go around the corner and I'll go down, you know, 3-4 properties to help people out. So we do take our snow removal very seriously. We were surprised and really kind of caught off guard by a $239 assessment. As I think one of the other callers said, I do think that I work in an industry that we utilize a lot of landscaping experts to clear our properties. And I do feel that the charge is excessive. That's a side note, and hopefully something that may be taken consideration for future use. But that being said, you know, I do think that there has been a more than reasonable effort on our part to keep the sidewalk clear, and I appreciate you hearing my point of view. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Again, we will address things in aggregate at the end. Any other potential phone numbers?
Can you hear me?
I certainly can. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Oh, okay. You had called me earlier and my name, and I didn't know how to unblock or unmute. But anyway, I'm Mila Bacalbas, 5121 44th Avenue South. Did you get what I sent in then? Okay. Here's my point. Number one, they're saying that the statute doesn't say that they're not supposed to give any warning letter anyway. My point is, you know, wouldn't it be a nice courtesy if they see something as a reminder to even post a note on the door rather than wait for a letter to arrive? Because like in my case, I use a P.O. box because I've had my mail stolen from here. And so I usually use a P.O. box, and as an elderly person, it's hard for me to every day, go to the post office, especially on days that are bad weather. So I think it would be a nice courtesy if they see something that's askew to just knock on the door or put a little note on the door as a sign of consumer concern. But anyway, the other thing is they're saying that it's subjective the way they inspect the sidewalk. Well, I live a block and a half from the 50th rail station, and I walk down to the train quite a bit, even during the winter. And what I notice is especially down towards the train station, the slope, there's so much ice there that I have to walk on the street. But I don't complain because I try to understand, people that live on a hillside, sometimes, the snow would be running off. And so, as I said, it would be a nice courtesy to people to just remind them first before all of a sudden sending a contractor to start doing this work and then charging, like they said, sky high, $239 for a very small strip of space. The other thing is, they said that you don't have to shovel the sidewalk when there's less than an inch of snow. Well, at times when the snow melts, because the next day, like some people have mentioned already, the temperature fluctuates a lot during this change of season time. So what I did is I went to the to the Weather Bureau website, and I also called them how I can download the temperature changes. And you will see that on the day that they supposedly shoveled my sidewalk, it was 41 degrees was the temperature, 41, 42 degrees. So it's all mushy, watery stuff that was draining from the slight slope I have in the front, especially after, the buildup comes from when my neighbor cut down a huge old maple tree that was sucking up water before. So anyway, so my point is, let's not be punitive and always, try to I guess get people to have to complain when we can just be more consumer friendly in the way we approach these policies on how things can be rectified. I know we want to have a nice environment, but I think it's a little bit overdone. And this year or last year, I guess they said that they started having a reactive way of looking at things. Well, as I said, I walk to the train station a block and a half, and yet, how did they miss seeing all that ice buildup on the sidewalk on the way to the train? And so it's just kind of hard to understand, why we have to be so punitive in the way we look at things. I can see if somebody completely really ignores the regulation, but I think from what I'm hearing, a lot of these people really are trying their best, and so this subjectiveness of clearing down to the pavement, the whole width of the sidewalk. Well, we're dealing with Mother Nature, so we can't always be, a little bit too perfect. And the other thing too is the gentleman who gave the speech for the city said that sometimes you can wait for softening of the salt and sand, and they might give you a little break on that. Well, when you have something that is so hard, and you wait, and the temperature drops, it goes sky high, of course it melts. And so you can easily then clear it up. And in my case, the picture they even showed, a cat, a CAT tractor right by the sidewalk. Well, my goodness, that was just a prop, an exaggerated prop. But anyway, so I just wanted to point that out, that let's not be so punitive in the way we approach these things. I think there are a lot of elderly people now in my neighborhood, and it's so hard to find contractors, especially in the winter, to help clear snow. Because even the people who do landscaping, they refuse to do snow anymore because they're getting older, but they'll do summer.
Well, I think these are a good collection of points and insights to the broader policy, and as suggested, we have been over the years taking different approaches, and so your comments speak to not only your specific situation but also food for thought for the broader policies as well. Clerk, is there anyone else trying to communicate with us that we see?
Agnes Chick-Fufa is on the line now.
Oh, okay. Agnes, please state your name and address for the record. Star 6 to unmute.
We also have Abukar Ali. He is on the line and will be using an interpreter from the clerk's office.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Is the interpreter online?
Hello,
Hello?
my name is Ayan Adnan. I will be interpreting for Abukar Ali.
Thank you. You could state his address for the record.
Yes, his address is 722 28th Street East, Minneapolis, Minnesota 55407.
Thank you.
And some of the concerns that Mr. Ali shared with me is that he has been a resident of this home for about 13 years now, and he's never received a fine for not clearing the pathways. He shared with me that he did clean that morning, but unfortunately he did not take pictures since this was his first time being fined. He now knows, just hearing from the other speakers, that for future reference he will be sure to document it. And he asked me to ask what would the next steps be in terms of what happens after voicing his concerns, and what are the options for him to remove this fine.
Very good. We're just now reviewing the photographs before and after on file. Is there any other comment he wishes to make?
aniga inta sana waad u sheegtay musaada marka family ay oo si la xaruur wata ma awood ma.
He's sharing that because of his family obligations and him having 6 children and other financial obligations, that the fine that he feels like doesn't match the fact that he did clear the snow from his home. And he has no other comments.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the translation help. Clerk, Clerk, is there anyone else wishing to get in queue here?
She's still on. Agnes is still on the line.
Oh, Agnes, please address the committee. It's a *6 to unmute. I don't know if it's me or I'm just not hearing anything.
She appears to be unmuted, but she's not speaking.
Well, anyone else?
There's one additional number ending in 7487. If that person is here for this public hearing, they can press *6 to unmute.
So anyone with those last 4 digits on their phone wishing to present to the committee? Well,
there is one additional speaker that may be using the interpreter in the clerk's office, Humberto Alarcon.
Okay.
Or he may just be in the clerk's office.
Well, if they wish to address, they may. There may be some technical difficulties with the others. Of course, people can submit written testimony for the record. And with anyone who, written or verbal, submits an objection that reserves their rights for further appeal. I know much of the situations that were raised by the testifiers in a general sense were covered by the presentation by staff that touched on some of these issues. If there's anything that staff wishes to add that might be a slight nuance based on the presentation, I would invite them to do that. Or if there's any something that's clarifying, to do so, I will close the public hearing. Mr. Kennedy, do you have any sort of closing comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a lot to respond to there. I will try to get again a couple of themes. I did hear, I think it was Mila talked about, can't we just put a door hanger on or knock on the door or something like that? We have considered that. It hasn't come around yet, but we're not positive that that would give us the response we would need to, and it would slow things down. If there was no action taken, then we're way behind the 8 ball, and as far as getting contractors out there to get the work done if it doesn't work, but it's something we can continue to look at. I heard a couple of people talk about inconsistency. My neighbors look just as bad as mine. Why didn't they get gigged? I'm walking to the bus station and I have to walk across lots of sidewalks that are unshoveled that are worse than mine. We acknowledge that. We basically are working on a complaint basis. Our proactive inspections account for about 1/3 of the total number of inspections that we're doing. But again, that is a randomized sample. We're not inspecting the entire city, and we're doing the best we can given the resources, but we're not inspecting every sidewalk. There's no question about that. And sometimes they may not know that their neighbor did get a notice. Or sometimes when our inspectors are out, they'll look up and down the sidewalks, and if they see something, they may report it too. But then it's later in the queue in the process, so people may not realize that that's happening. Somebody asked what's next. I think they have, by appearing here, they have preserved their right to go to district court, and they can follow up there if they're not happy with the end results that the committee and council proposes here. The biggest theme again here is, again, this idea of what's good enough. And when I say that this is subjective, it is. And what is good enough? The committee members can look at these photos, many of them where we're going on a complaint basis. Somebody thought it wasn't good enough. We're out there and it doesn't match with the letter of the ordinance, bare pavement, full width. We fully understand that some of the time in the winter, you get bulletproof snow and ice on your sidewalks. It's very difficult to get it up. But the committee can look at these photos and help us understand what's good enough so that in the future, we're trying to follow your guidance and tell us what if you think some of these are good enough that they should be changed. The hearing officer in all of these cases decided to levy in full. And so it got through that process. Other than that, I think Mila said something about, I mentioned less, she said we don't have to do it if it's less than an inch. If I misled people there, I apologize. No, what I said was we go out and proactively inspect for snows of an inch or more. That's just kind of the threshold that we picked, rather than sending them out every time there's a trace or a tenth of an inch or something like that. That's just the time. People are responsible every event, whether it's a trace or a freezing rain or a little bit of snow, they're still responsible. So I think that's as much as I have. Councilmember Reich, I think you're muted.
I think some broader issues certainly are food for thought for our continuing iteration of the policy. Certainly something that I know that we're aware of and keen to address is, how our contractors use salienation. We want to do that in an effective way, but also in a environmentally appropriate way as well. And so I think that was also a point that was raised. But in terms of the general presentation of what our workers did per our policy, I will open it up to committee members if they have any questions or comments. Gordon, I believe you indicated.
I did, and I have to say it's really difficult to review the photos and compare them because I don't have hard copies in front of me. So this is a little bit more of a challenging way of doing it than we've done it in the past, that's for sure. I also wanted to ask Mr. Kennedy if any of these any of these addresses from the public hearing are been challenged are from any of our proactive enforcement efforts, because you said they were all complaint based, and I just wanted to clarify because I know we kind of tried something different this winter. We tried to be more proactive and do better with enforcement, hoping that would get us better results. Were all of these from complaints, or were some of them also from our proactive enforcement?
Chair Reich and Councilmember Gordon, yes, there was a mix here. Boy, I didn't keep track as we went along, but if you review the files, we can make all these files available to you so you can pull them up, see them on your screen. Also, it gives a little chronology at the beginning of each set of photos, and it will describe whether or not it was from a was initiated from a proactive or a reactive complaint. But yes, there was a mix.
And do you, in terms of the ones that we heard today from, was there also a mix?
Yes, there was.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't really I don't feel like I have the can make the judgment call in terms of pulling any of these out, or I guess I could look at them more online, and maybe I should have beforehand. I wasn't expecting it to go quite so deeply into this. I have to believe that when it went through the hearing and other people looked at it and staff looked at it and an administrator did, that they were trying to make a good and reasonable assessment. But I also hear some legitimate concerns from some of the property owners thinking that they had done a good enough job and it wasn't that much different than what the contractor did. And so they're concerned about why they're having to pay so much. And it just makes me think, and my last point is, I wish we could figure out a better way to do some of this so it wasn't spending all of our time and money and effort to do these enforcements, and we could actually spend some of that on maybe proactively assisting in keeping the sidewalks clean. And I'd still be interested in pursuing that, even if it's in some pilots on some commercial corridors or something. As you all know, you probably recall I've said that in the past. But I'm going to let somebody else maybe make this motion. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else?
Can I make?
Oh, go ahead. Is this a staff person responding?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Who is this?
This is Kedar. Can I just make one request to the committee?
The public hearing's closed, sir. I think if you would address the staff people before we make our final decision in the council, they're available. Hopefully there's some contact information for you. They would probably be better able to address anything specific at this point.
Right, it wasn't anything specific that I'm asking for, but I'm just giving you an overall suggestion, recommendation. In today's world, everybody has a cell phone. Instead of sending a letter that reaches us 10 days later, which is way too late, could a simple text message be sent saying, hey, we have a complaint? And most property owners, I can guarantee, would comply after they get a text like that. If there was an issue, to at least go and check it out, which saves time and money for everybody rather than wasting taxpayers' money with district court and this committee meeting and the review board before that and many other things before that. It just doesn't make sense. You know, why send a letter? Why not just do a text message?
I think that's a really good suggestion. I think staff heard that, and we do have communications professionals, so it sounds like a modernization of our approach. So thanks for the tip. Any other staff comments? If not, I'll move the item before us. Any further conversation? If not, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Fletcher. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Chair Reich.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes.
Well, that concludes our public hearings for today. We can now go down to the bottom of the agenda per discussion as listed, and I will yield the floor to Director Hutchinson.
Chair Reich and members of the Transportation and Public Works Committee, thank you for this discussion item and having it scheduled today. I'm Robin Hutchison. I'm the Director of Public Works. Before we proceed, I would like to recognize and make sure they are on the line, recognize Council members Cano and Jenkins, whose ward we are actually going to be discussing, who I believe have joined us today. Thank you. I do have a presentation. I don't know where it is and how it shows up. There it is. Very good. I am joined today by Transportation Planner Alexander Cato, who has been working on this project since May. He'll help me present. Today's presentation is really a follow-up from the more comprehensive update that several directors and departments gave at POGO a couple of weeks ago. And in that presentation, we talked roads of 4 distinct neighborhoods. And the importance of being sure that we respond to those needs as we think about our streets. Today's presentation is a little bit different. We're here at the Transportation and Public Works Committee. We are very operationally focused as a department, as are you as a committee. And today's update will be more about interim design options for 38th and Chicago. So if we could go to the next slide, please. I see I'm cutting out. I'll try and speak up a little bit. Just a couple things. We are going to keep this brief. We're going to review some long-term commitments. I want to talk about winter challenges, access challenges first, and how it's exacerbated by winter. We're going to review our interim design principles. We're going to look at some interim design options, and then we're going to talk about engagement and communications. So we can go to the next slide, please. I don't want to talk about the street without talking about the bigger picture. The City Council passed a resolution declaring racism as a public health emergency. We are aligning the city's resources around this place, including $100,000 for the co-creation and visioning of a memorial place and space. There is some funds through the Creative City Making Program. We are poised as a city through CPED to adopt the 38th Street Thrive, and recently 38th Street has been designated as a cultural district. Thank you so much to the council members who have approved the renaming of Chicago Avenue. That is now adopted, and we can celebrate the renaming of the intersection. And Public Works is working to accelerate funding to provide more resources to the reconstruction of the intersection, making it what the community envisions it and wants it to be, and also celebrating the arrival of what should be, and we hope to be, is the region's next bus rapid transit line, the D line. So with that as a backdrop, I want to just turn a little bit to more focused and specific conversation around the streets, as we often talk about streets at Transportation and Public Works Committee. In our last meeting at POGO, I talked a little bit about some access issues and our desire to improve access and to reconnect neighborhoods and to ensure that we are able to provide emergency services, ADA access. Here's just one image of what it looks like. This is what it looked like a couple of weeks ago. You can go to the next slide, please. I also showed you this picture and explained that the fire department was able to provide great response and service. However, it did require community members to move some of the barricades to allow that truck in. That's just a recap of some things that we presented at POGO, and I give you that recap as a precursor to the next slide. Winter in and of itself isn't the biggest and only challenge. Winter will exacerbate some of these access challenges that we currently feel. And I believe that winter conditions will not only exacerbate the access issues, but will hinder the movement of people in their own neighborhoods and between critical neighborhoods. We seek to prepare and review with the community an interim design for winter that does not go back to normal, that does respond to the community's needs for space at that intersection, but also ensures that we can do our jobs through winter. And the rest of this presentation will really focus on how we'd like to do that. Go to the next slide. Once again, I talked about these design principles at the POGO meeting. These hold true as we're looking at specific design options to improve our access. We want to provide space for mourning and reflection, and for community uses, discussion, protest even. Streets can play host to so many different things. We want to increase our public visibility and safety. We want to preserve the public art to the degree that we can, and we believe we can preserve the art, some of it through the winter. And we want to improve business, residential, and transit access, and we do not want this to be a return to normal any more than the community does. We feel responsibility to respond to community needs, and we feel a great sense of creativity and inspiration in how we're thinking about how this street can function. Go to the next slide. Uh-oh. There we go. Thank you. I want to provide just a quick reminder of two interim design options that we presented at POGO. We're not going to spend a lot of time on those because we've refined and developed them further, and that's what we'll show you today. And the previous design options were focused on 38th Street. Today we're going to show you some more creative approaches to improving the access, and it does include some work on Chicago as well. I'm now going to ask Alexander Cato to introduce himself and talk through these design options that many on our team have contributed to, and really reflect the principles by which we're trying to achieve an interim winter design.
Thank you, Director Hutchinson. Can everyone hear me clearly? I'm assuming yes. Next
Yes.
slide. Thank you. Chair Reich and members of the Transportation and Public Works Committee, I'm Alexander Cato, a transportation planner within the Transportation Planning and Programming Division of Public Works. I'm here today as the project manager for 30th and Chicago Interim Design. Thank you for the opportunity to present. As Director Hutchinson stated, the POGO presentation on August 20th highlighted several design options that Public Works developed for 38th Street. I'll briefly review these as a refresher and also use those to illustrate how our updated design options integrate those original concepts. However, before I do that, I just want to touch on the existing conditions at the intersection of 38th and Chicago. In the image here, you'll see the four legs of the intersection. In the center is the fifth sculpture. The close-up image shows a photo of how it looked earlier this summer. Still looks relatively the same with a few modifications. The north leg has a barricade at Columbus. The east leg has a barricade at Elliott and 38th. The south leg has a barrier at 39th. And to the west, there's a barrier at Columbus and 38th. There are two sets of additional barricades to the north and west, but the configuration here shows the existing conditions which have been in place upwards of 100 days. Next slide, please. Thank you. The first interim design option we showed at POGO was on August 20th was titled 38th Street two-way traffic with fifth sculpture roundabout. This option focused on preserving art and the public gathering space on Chicago while also improving access on 38th Street. In this option, the fifth sculpture would remain in its current location and the roadway would facilitate two-way east-west traffic. And you can see that in the zoomed in figure to the right. You see a westbound vehicle would travel west. When it approached the fifth sculpture, it would navigate around that and continue west. The eastbound movements were the same. The north and south legs of Chicago in this design were closed. The benefits of this model is it preserves the gathering space on Chicago, does restore transit service for Route 23, improves business resident access on 38th Avenue. The challenges with this design is it does not restore Metro Transit Route 5 to this intersection since Chicago is still closed, does not accommodate winter snow removal on Chicago, and also adds a level of complexity to vehicle movements. Next slide, please. Thank you. The second interim design option we showed at POGO on the 20th was titled 38th Street two-way traffic without fifth sculpture roundabout. This option, very similar to the last one, focused on preserving the gathering space on Chicago while still providing access on 38th Street to east-west movements. As similar pros and cons to the last example, the main difference is that the fifth sculpture is moved north from its current location. This option, as the last one, does not accommodate winter snow removal, and it does not accommodate the Metro Transit Route 5. So those were the two kind of big shortcomings, not shortcomings, but the two pieces that the 38th Street design did not accommodate. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Public Works has continued to develop interim design options that are in line with the principles that Director Hutchinson highlighted earlier in this presentation. Interim winter design option 1 is called Chicago Avenue Converging One-Ways, is proposing to retain the fifth sculpture in its current location while allowing two-way east-west traffic as highlighted in the previous visual, and also allowing one-way traffic on Chicago Avenue. So the way this would work out for the north leg of Chicago Avenue, there would be one-way southbound traffic as that vehicle approached the intersection, they would be required to turn right onto 38th Street. The south leg of Chicago would have one-way northbound traffic. As it approached the intersection, it would be required to turn right onto 38th Street. So we're calling these converging one-ways. The north and south legs of the intersection come together, and then the vehicles are required to turn to the right. East-west movements would continue as they were designed. The benefits of this configuration, especially with the converging one-ways, we occupy less roadway width on Chicago, so we're preserving more space for public gathering, for a lot of the art that's been organically created by the community, but still providing some level of access on Chicago. This does restore Route 23 to 38th Street and potentially restores Route 5 to the intersection. The complexity with this is that the Metro Transit buses, Route 5, could come to the intersection to pick up and drop off passengers, but after that, they would have to detour at the sculpture onto 38th Street. So Metro Transit is still doing some internal analysis to confirm if this detour routing is really viable from an operation standpoint. So we have that as a TBD. Those are the pros and cons to this option. Could we transition to the next slide, please? Interim winter design option 2, two-way traffic is titled two-way traffic on 30th in Chicago, and this is proposed to relocate the Fisk sculpture to the northeast corner of the intersection. Two-way traffic would be allowed in all 4 directions, north, south, east, and west. Although we are proposing in this example to return vehicles to the intersection, this option is still grounded in many of those interim design principles that Director Hutchinson alluded to when she was speaking. The positives of this, it does restore the 5 to the intersection as well as the 23. It improves the business residential access. It still preserves art in the area. If you look in the figure to the left, you'll see it, and it's a little difficult to view. It's a little blurry, but there's orange lines around that northeast corner of the intersection and extending east along 38th Street. So those areas would be barricaded and preserved for a lot of the community created art that's in that area, because we recognize there's still a very strong need for folks from the community, the city, and really all over the country and even the world to come to this space. And we want to still allow that to happen and preserve that capacity. The challenge with this design, it does require relocating the Fisk sculpture to potentially the northeast corner of the intersection, and we'd have to work with community on how that would occur. Next slide, please. So to conclude, these are the design options we're looking at. Option 1 would be maintaining the Fisk sculpture in the center of the intersection. Option 2 would be moving the Fisk sculpture out of the center of the intersection. And these are the options that we will be asking feedback from the public. Effective today, we will be engaging with the public to really fine tune these design options. We have a survey that's online on our website. It's open through the Sunday, the 4th of October. We'll be reaching out to residents, businesses, and neighborhood organizations for feedback. And we'll also be conducting a Public Works online open house on Thursday, October 1st from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Next slide, please. And this information will be available at our website, which is in the first bullet here. We also have a Gov delivery email sign up and a 30th in Chicago email for questions. At this point, I will conclude my piece and hand it back to Director Hutchinson.
Thanks, Alexander. Really good work. Thank you, Chair Reich. That concludes our presentation, and we are available for questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Council President Bender, I see you have your name in the chat queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had 2 more technical questions. The first is, are all of the barriers that are up as indicated on the map, are those all city provided barriers, or could you talk us through kind of what's there from community versus the city's own materials? And then the second question was if now or as a follow-up, could we have more information about the current status of transit operations? So could you describe to us where the 23 and the 5 are running now, what the detours look like, and then if you have information about the service impacts of that, again, either now or as a follow-up, would be helpful. Thank you both.
Sure. Council or Chair Reich, Council President Bender, I'll start with the first question. I'll take this one. I may need some help from Alexander on the second. The graphics that you have today show where the city has placed the barricades. Our placement of the barricades is done to protect pedestrians in the space and also to leave gaps to allow for access, emergency access. Community members have placed additional barricades that are not reflected on our map and are very often closing those gaps. The second question, transit is, the 5 is detoured to Park and Portland. The 23, I don't know. I may need help answering this one. Alexander, I'm just going to say right up front, it's okay if you don't have the answer. We can get back to the council president. But if you do, great. I thought you would.
23 is detoured to Portland and Bloomington.
And Council President, I think we'll need to ask a few more questions of Metro Transit on the service impacts, and we can get back to you with that information.
Thank you both.
Any other questions for staff? Council Member Jenkins, followed by Council Member Cano. Oh no, wait a minute. I'm looking at the queue wrong. Did either of the ward council members wish to make inquiries with staff or comments? Councilmember Cano. Oh, she's good.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, I had a chance to meet with Robin on this before, and we've been working on this issue for months now. I don't have any questions. Not for this, not germane to this particular conversation. There's other conversations, but that's not what this committee's for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you very much and appreciate the presentation. So I just want to be clear, this is considered an interim next step design. I see head nods. And then there'll be a deeper conversation about a longer term solution. And I'm just curious if everything is still on the table as we look at that longer term solution. And I know some things would be much more complicated than others, including a pedestrian plaza of some kind. But I just want to know, we have yet to come up with the ultimate long-term solution for this area. We're just trying to survive the next few months.
Chair Wright, Councilmember Gordon, that is a correct assessment. We need to make some design adjustments. I'm going to call them adjustments for the winter. There is a bigger effort that we will be undertaking with numerous partners, CPED chief among them, to imagine what this intersection could be. It's not our decision to make alone or even in the lead. It has to be a community-driven process. And we look forward to those conversations about what the community wants and needs, and there is nothing that is off the table. However, it's my professional opinion, strong opinion, that the D-line is a really important investment for this community, this neighborhood, and for the city. So I think you can expect to see a really creative planning process that includes numerous options, no option too crazy to consider, and is likely going to be transit focused.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments per this presentation? Council Member or Council President Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know this committee presentation is more technical in nature and hasn't included like a lot of the other factors. I know that there have been a huge number of public meetings. It sounded like 80 or more different community meetings. And I'll just say that I think for the rest of us, you know, we will be really relying on the council members who've been participating in those meetings, Council Vice President Jenkins and Councilmember Cano, Again, I know this is a more technical focused kind of update presentation, but as we move forward, those council members who've had the opportunity to be there in community, will have our support, and I think we'll look to their help in understanding what those 80 meetings, the ones that they've attended, have sounded like and been like. Of course, the different various staff who've been participating in all of those conversations, and then I think it is helpful to have this more focused update on the engagement that's coming for these particular decisions. So just maybe a little of that extra broader context before we wrap up.
Thank you for that, Council President Bender, and I concur with that sentiment. We will take a lot of our cues from the leadership of our peers in that area, and total respect for all the work that they've been engaged in to date. And I know our staff, as you can even see from a very narrow slice of the overall conversation, how much thought has gone into just this piece of wintertime functionality. So I think there's a good groundwork for both our technical and community leadership that we will definitely be supporting, as you so well stated, Council President Bender. And then Councilmember Gordon, do you want to comment or have any questions? Oh, Council VP Jenkins.
Hi, I do apologize. I got a call from a media representative, and so was dealing with that and had you guys on mute. However, I do appreciate these designs moving forward. I have been in continual communication with folks at the site. I really want to commend Public Works staff for all the really challenging and difficult work that they've been doing out in community. This is kind of a technical issue, as the council president just mentioned. However, it does require a more adaptive and/or humane approach to how we're dealing with it. I think these designs sort of contribute to that, and the ongoing work of communicating with the community is continuing. In fact, there's a virtual session that'll be happening this evening, and we're going to keep this process moving forward. But we do have to get these roads moving for the winter time, so that we can make sure we're serving the residents of this community to the fullest extent possible. So thank you all for this, and thanks to the Public Works staff for providing these different scenarios to move us forward. And with that, I yield my time.
Thank you, Council Vice President Jenkins. Anyone else from the committee? If not, we will receive and file this report. That will conclude our business for the day. And I thank all the committee participants and the staff for today's agenda. And we are adjourned.